the resistance trying to take down the current government. They saved my life.
Oh. Wow.
Why did my people not alert me of your arrival?
We didn't see any people.
I didn't see anybody on the way.
There's no one out there.
They were gone when he got
I
here.
turned them into my mother in my head and killed them.
Welcome everybody, you are getting Lost in Plot, the show where we focus on story first, but not exclusively across the mediums of film, television, video games, really anything with a story. I'm Wade, that's my brother Jake, and today we have for you, The Suicide Squad. Now let's go get lost in the plot. This is your warning that there are spoilers coming, Now you've been warned. Here we go. Welcome to Hell. Also known as Belle Reve, the prison where all the worst supervillains are kept and where they will do anything to get out. Even join the super secret Task Force X. So Amanda Waller assembles a collection of cons, including Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Captain Boomerang, Ratcatcher 2, Savant, Javelin, Blackguard, and everyone's favorite psycho, Harley Quinn. Trekking through a jungle teeming with militant guerrillas, the squad is on a search and destroy mission with only Colonel Rick Flag there to make them behave. One wrong move, and they're dead. So this reimagining of the Suicide Squad is entirely the vision of writer-director James Gunn, the ensemble cast expert from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. The difference here is he's been left unsupervised and given the WB checkbook in the hopes that he knows what the do with this IP. And he does. With a sprawling cast, he executes multiple rewarding character arcs, but he also can't get out of his own way. So if you imagine you're Warner Brothers and you're sending James Gunn to the firing range, and you're giving him this DC Comics property as his arsenal, and you're telling him, hey guy, just hit that target for us. And more often than not, he hits the target. But he also slips out the back to chug NyQuil and toss hand grenades at stray cats. So the job's done, but not everyone's going to be happy with that extra mess. And that is the Suicide Squad experience here. What is the WB checklist? The WB checklist? Yeah. I couldn't tell you.
Well, I mean, you said they gave him the WB checklist. You're implying checkbook. What's write it
blank
out,
check,
and do whatever he's
any
gonna
budget,
do with it.
yeah. Unsupervised, do whatever you want. Here's our checkbook. Go make it.
Because I was wondering, do you think he really had free reign, or was there some kind of corporate requirements
I think he
that
had
got
free reign.
shoehorned in?
I think he had free reign. If you can tell me a sequence or a segment where Warner Brothers intervened, I mean,
I'll take my swipe.
they gave him a hard R rating.
I'll take my swipe.
All right,
I think they intervened because I think this character is forced in every single movie she's in. Harley Quinn. And she has a sequence where she seduces the despot leader of this country, who actually seems like a suave and rather regal gentleman who apparently is looking for a wife or something. Yeah. And the whole sequence is forced, as I feel like her character is forced and always just thrown at you.
I'll score you to that point, because I agree. I was going to make this point a little bit later, and I'll hold off on that for Harley Quinn now. But yes, I agree. Other than that, I mean, they gave him everything he had for Guardians, but it's like, no, here's your free budget. We're going to give you the hard R rating. Go as hard as you want, basically. And here you go. Give us a winner. And did he give them a winner?
Well, we said his name, so let's talk about him a little bit more in Who Wrote This.
That's right. Now, say my name.
Talking about who wrote this, it's James Gunn, and probably like you, I'm realizing that I was watching a lot of James Gunn films earlier on that I had no idea was a James Gunn film. For instance, we go back to 2002 and start with the live-action Scooby-Doo. That was him. The very next year, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake of the George Romero classic. The audience has it at an 8.5. What's wrong with you? Shame on you. Go watch the original, not the
Yeah,
the
that movie was trash. And it's
yeah.
forgotten. Nobody goes back
I
and
can't
watches
gloss
that
over that
movie.
part. Yeah.
It's garbage.
Next we have 2006 Slither. Did you see Slither?
Saw it, really, really liked Slither. And I've even read the script on Slither, and the script is much better than the actual film as to what they shot. Very, very good movie. Very good script. Pretty good movie. has Michael Rooker, who's a frequent cast of his, has Nathan Fillion in the lead role. There's a lot to like about that particular movie.
Okay, next it is the big one, Guardians of the Galaxy. The original one in 2014, that's really where he made his mark. In between doing the sequel, he went off to do an independent film called The Belko Experiment. I've never seen it. I don't think you have either.
I've not seen the Belko Experiment, but I wanted to mention on Guardians of the Galaxy, he's credited as a writer on that one. He was not the only one.
Not the sole writer. It's kind of how we do this. Just because you have a credit as writing for the script doesn't mean you wrote it all by yourself. It's just we couldn't go in and list all those names there. But you're right, Nicole Perlman is the other writer that kind of came up with the original script, which got greenlit by Marvel. And then they selected James Gunn. As often happens, the director comes in and adds their own little personal mark to it, and then they get a writing credit out of it. Whether it's fair or not, we'll leave that to other parties to decide. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 hits in 2017. Those are both well received. The first Guardian of the Galaxy is up at an 8.5.
That's sequel, right. Higher rated the first one than the second one. Now, for me personally, I very much loved the first one. Didn't like the second one nearly as much, which is why I felt compelled to mention Nicole Perlman, because I think her influence was probably missed on that second film.
That's what you were missing, because he did that exclusively himself.
That's right.
Okay. And just like that is what he had here with Suicide Squad. Like I said, he wrote all of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and directed it, but that's a PG-13. That's in the Marvel-verse. You've got a lot of creative input coming down from Marvel. You're kind of in handcuffs on that. Golden handcuffs, but handcuffs nonetheless. Whereas Suicide Squad, I mean, this is a hard R. They weren't even playing around with PG-13. The first attempt at Suicide Squad was PG-13.
This is a sequel to The Suicide Squad.
Is it a sequel? It's kind of
a sequel.
Yeah. There's no mention or reference to anything in the
There's some of the
David
same
Ayer
characters.
Suicide Squad. Of course, the same characters, but none of the events. You don't have to see the first Suicide Squad at all to watch this one.
No, probably shouldn't.
No, he hits all the same beats to set it up, and it's his own thing here. So that's what we have for James Gunn's notable credits. Now, let's break his story.
Let's break it. So my one thing for the Suicide Squad is the neat trick that James Gunn pulls off in subverting the cynicism. Now look, this is a sequel to The Suicide Squad. It doesn't get more cynical than that, all right? But what you have here is a hard R comic book where they're going to use blood, guts, and profanity all the way through. And to be fair, James Gunn starts there. Okay, we get introduced to the dregs of society who are forced into involuntary servitude at the behest of a corrupt government and then placed on the near suicidal mission. We're introduced to a cast of colorful characters we think we're going to go on the journey with, only to see their faces get blown off in their failed attempts to storm the beach in the first action sequence. The Weasel drowns before he makes the shore. Javelin Man never gets to throw his spear, and Michael Rooker turns tail and swims out to sea until his suicide collar detonates. All of this is pretty bleak, but James Gunn isn't content to keep it there. And by the end of the film, we see this ragtag group actually find a way to form real relationships, real friendships, and then do the right thing in the face of pretty dire circumstances. Now that is a hopeful way to end the story. Harley Quinn finds a purpose for that javelin she's been carrying around the entire film when she uses it to kill the giant mutant starfish. And then the Weasel didn't drown. In fact, he makes it to the beach and runs off into the woods. Idris Elba is able to repair the damaged relationship with his daughter, or at least get a chance to do so. And even the Shark Man learns that if you don't treat friends like Nom Nom, then you get to have friends. And that's better than not. So all of this is to say it's a pretty hopeful message in a movie where a bunch of weirdos put aside their differences, band together and rely on one another, and find a way to topple a corrupt system that's screwing them. And who doesn't like a story like that?
I don't know. I liked all of the character arcs. There were some great ones here. Idris Elba just crushed it in this film. I thought he was great.
He was outstanding. I loved Ratcatcher too. I thought she was a wonderful character.
She had
as well.
A great character, great arc. Really, she delivers the main theme of the film in the end with the relationship between her and her father.
That's right.
Did you see who played her father?
Waikiki
the director of Thor Ragnarok. That was a good cameo in there. There's a lot of good character arcs, and this is what James Gunn does so well with his ensemble cast, is he gives everybody something with their character, some kind of change or development. With Peacemaker, it's the fact that he's offered the change, but he doesn't change, and that's kind of his undoing there.
It is.
He's called out very early by Idris Elba. It's like, you just use freedom as an excuse to do whatever you want. And it registers. You can see on the character's face that it clicks with him, and there's a callback to it later that, you know, he just kind of buries that deep down away and says, nope, that's me, and he keeps going that way. But the rest of the people do experience a lot of significant change. You can watch so many films out there where there's no character arc whatsoever. They don't do shit with it. They just leave it out there and forget about it. This one, every single character's got something, you know, meaty that they can chew on and they can push forward.
And even how the characters relate to one another. I mean, you don't have a clunky character in this entire film. You really don't. Yeah. I mean, even with Ratcatcher, like, her lead rat offers Bloodsport like a leaf or something, and he rejects it right away. But then by the end of the film, he's made friends with the rat too. I mean, it's got its head and its heart in the right place, and for me, that's really elevates this over what should have been derivative garbage. Yeah. That's what you signed on for. When you bought a ticket to this and sat down, if you didn't know it was James Gunn, I mean, you're seeing the sequel to Suicide Squad. You just got an uncommon level of craft for James Gunn, who, for this stuff, it's his forte. He knows what he's doing.
And everyone is growing in significant ways, and the trick is, can you have all these different character arcs that all kind of tie into your same theme in the film? And I think they all do, with the exception of the sore thumb that is the Harley Quinn storyline, which just does not fit in with the rest at all.
She's the only character I don't like. And let me be clear, I like Harley Quinn. I just don't like how she's been portrayed in film. I think she's a very cool character, but the way she's portrayed in film, I have no sympathy for her. I don't buy her. She's not particularly
They don't know what to do with her.
They don't know what to do with her.
And it's simple because this whole character was created as a very simple concept. The Joker's girlfriend. I'm sorry, but that's what it was.
It's true. That's what she's always been.
She was always thought of and created as the Joker's girlfriend. Who would be crazy enough? What kind of woman would be psychotic enough to be in a relationship, some kind of deranged relationship with the Joker? That was the whole concept for the character, but now it's kind of feminist empowerment, and you can't be in an abusive relationship, so she's broken up with him. She's out on her own trying to define herself, and she seems to be entering into another relationship with another, you know, domineering man that could do the same thing. That's fine.
But they don't even
But it's
give
not
her...
a Harley Quinn movie, and it doesn't tie into what everybody else is doing.
And they don't even give her rules. It's like the Harley Quinn, like her physical prowess was because of her acrobatics or whatever that she was able to do, and all that's gone. She's just basically
her
murdering,
only
killing.
rule seems to be she can't show weakness.
Yeah.
Even when she's kind of tortured and imprisoned, she can't be rescued. She'll rescue herself and slaughter everyone in the building.
Yeah, the only thing I liked about her, the only thing I liked about her is that in the initial scene on the beach, the javelin superhero, whoever he is, he gets killed before he can do anything, and she picks up his javelin and she carries with it the entire film, which is a hopeful thing. It's not like, oh, he died for nothing. Oh, she's going to make sure that he didn't die for nothing. She's going to take his spear, and it serves her in the end, in the climactic battle. And he, as it turns out, he didn't die for nothing. He gave her the weapon that she used to take down the giant mutant starfish. Starro.
Okay, well, I think we've broken the story sufficiently, so let's find out if it's dead or alive. Dead or alive time, we're going to find out if the Suicide Squad actually survives or not.
What's the verdict?
The verdict over here is alive. Alive with a 6 out of 10. Listen, I was having a blast with this film in the first act. Like, it was a rip-roaring ride. I was into it. I was having lots of fun. I liked the choices that James Gunn was making. It was good. As the film went on, his kind of jokes, his gags about the blood and the violence and things like that grew tiresome. And he kind of takes a joke and he plays it too far at certain times. On the other hand, some of the character arcs were really, really good towards the end of the film in the third act, especially Ratcatcher 2, who comes out with the theme of the film, which is, you know, no matter how lowly you are, you can still serve a purpose. Now, if you think of the comic books, Ratcatcher is an awful character.
I know, and look what he did.
But look what he did with it. King Shark, that's another stupid one. But look, he even finds something of value in that character.
Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man. Polka Dot Man is another one. He's got a great arc. Now, he's a good example of, I think, the joke pushed too far, right? Because he's got a hysterical moment at the beginning when they've slaughtered all of the rebels that are actually helping Rick Flag. And they're asking, well, where are my men? And Bloodsport and Peacemaker are kind of saying, oh, I don't know. And he steps forward and said, I made them into my mother and I killed them. That's hysterical. That's a riotous
But come
moment.
on, you didn't laugh when they turned the giant starfish into his mom at the end?
No.
I was laughing.
Because
so
I knew they
maybe
would
just
do
a
it.
difference in taste.
I found it amusing.
But it looks so goddamn funny. His mother's Karen is up there knocking down buildings.
At that point, I was over the joke because I knew where it's going to go from here. And it's like, for James Gunn, it's not enough to do the joke. You're going to do the joke, and you're going to stretch the joke. And you're going to stretch the joke again, because sometimes a joke, once you stretch it, can actually become funnier because you've pushed it that far. But then if you push it beyond that, it can become, annoying or predictable. And that's what I found there. Like, sometimes when his mother pops up, I thought, oh, that's funny. Then when, the entire dance hall is his mother, and he's dancing with all of them, and that's kind of weird and bizarre. I don't know what to do with that. But that's why this isn't a higher score, because this was very close to a 7 for me. Because I was having a really good time with it. Just some of those things, and I talked about it when I was talking about Lost in Blood, it's the excess that James Gunn does. He does the job. But if you get rid of some of that excess, some of that self-editing, would have been great, and probably would have 7 or maybe even a higher score.
Well, for me, it is alive as well, and it's also going to be a 6 out of 10 for a lot of the same. Well, I'm going to have the same feelings about it, but for different reasons than what you cited. There's a lot that I really like about this movie. Initially, you were into it. Initially, I was a little bit off-put by some of the, just visceral, over-the-top violence and the profanity. It seemed like there's a really ugly scene when Idris Elba has his daughter at the prison, and they're literally like shrieking obscenities at one another, and it was a little much. Now, I can understand in hindsight that basically he's arcing away from that, so I can appreciate that he's setting that up at the beginning.
It's pushing something too far. The point is, he's a terrible father, and he needs to become a better father. And he's just awful at it. And so he curses at his daughter, they're cursing at each other, and it's kind of, it gets to a weird place, right? Because they push it so far just cursing at one another.
Yeah, and those excesses come back again with the sequence we talked about with Harley Quinn, which is why I talked about, you said the WB checkbook, but I thought you meant checklist, because I thought that this Harley Quinn sequence was a force. It's like, hey, this comes with the movie, you got to put this in here.
I totally agree that they'd say, hey, you need to have a big part for Harley Quinn. It's like, okay, she doesn't really fit in with the other guys. Maybe we can kind of put her off on her own. She can do her own thing.
And it didn't help the plot.
No.
And it wasn't good in its own right. It was just kind of bad.
I think it dragged the film down.
Yeah.
You had such good story arcs going with all the other characters that every time we had to flash over to her, it was really like a different film.
Yeah, and that's for me what takes it from a 7 down to a 6, is that you did have some of these elements that were pushed a little too far, that detracted from the main narrative, that just didn't fit.
While we both liked the character of Harley Quinn, she just wasn't incorporated well with the rest of the story.
She was in pieces, but I mean, the thing with the javelin, I really liked that.
That should have been her main thing in her arc.
But it's like, no, we've got to give her more, we've got to give her more, we've got to get her top billing. Why? Is everybody coming to this to see her? Like, who is? Like, is this a thing? Why do we keep forcing it?
It hasn't really been done right to this point.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what it is for me. It's a 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it. This is far better than a sequel to The Suicide Squad could have hoped for, in my opinion. I hope people find this movie. I hope they enjoy it to the extent that we did.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's one to watch. The audience score is at a 7.1 for this one. I thought it would have been higher. I thought this one would have been knocked out of the park, but the revenue was not good for it. It did not do good box office, not even good streaming numbers on HBO Max, and I don't know why that is. If it's because Suicide Squad's been burned out, the David Ayer film was a horrible adaptation for that.
Maybe people aren't as big into knowing who James Gunn is and what he's done. I mean, they really pushed this movie as James Gunn's Suicide Squad, so I don't know how you could miss it. But I mean, if you were expecting those types of numbers, are what I would expect if he wasn't directing this and it was just a stock sequel to the Suicide Squad. But
Agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyways, I'm interested to know, you thought the audience score would have been higher. Guys, let us know if you saw this film. Are you pulling back on it a little extent? If you are, tell us why. If you really liked it and you're over the moon about it, tell us that as well.
Why is this one lower when the Guardians of the Galaxy films, which are almost the same thing, are so much higher? It's that Marvel versus DC rivalry, I guess.
Could be, and that is a good question. Guys, if you liked this video, please leave us a thumbs. If you really liked it, consider a subscription. Check us out on Twitter, and we will see you all on the next one.